In this world, there are some people who are born special. They either have gifts bequeathed unto them because of the circumstances of their birth, or they are naturally gifted at a certain thing, or they have the perseverance to become the best at a certain thing. Even though these people exist in the world, it is actually often rare to see all of them succeed. Why is this the case? You see, even if a person is born special, the place and people they are born to and around have a huge impact on them that is felt throughout their lives. This impact can either be positive or negative. And if it happens to be negative, the life that these people would lead will become a scarred one. It'll be a life that is very difficult to find the light in. People are strong. Humanity is the embodiment of survival. The truth of our world is that it is rooted in inequality, injustice, and tragedy. Most people are so strong that despite the worst of circumstances, they survive. But beyond survival, there exists a thing called success. And not a lot of people think about going beyond survival, because even survival is that difficult to achieve, and while they can still dream, most people give up on that dream and stick to just trying to survive day by day. But for every million people who give up, there is one person who doesn't. There is that one person who perseveres through the negativity, all whilst being affected by it, and moves past just survival. This person? Well, they are the ones who succeed. In the story of Black Clover, the society that exists in the Clover Kingdom is built upon inequity. This is mainly attributable in a physical sense to an incident that took place in the past. Due to this incident, the genetic makeup of the entire society has been fixed to be rooted in a continued moment of inequality. Even if one were to be born in the lower levels of society, but somehow unnaturally have inexplicable power inherently, the status of their birth hinders the society from acknowledging them. So it only stands to reason that those at the top continue to enjoy the fruits of their ancestors' historic misdeeds, right? Well, what is so interesting about certain characters born into the top, the royalty, is that even though they are born in what the rest of the world would consider the most comfortable and best placed situation, they do not have the luxury to revel in this genetic inequity that tilts in their favor for them. Imperfect characters born into privilege but are fundamentally raised by the negative situation surrounding that privilege are certainly extremely fascinating characters to explore, in my opinion. What was so fundamentally wrong in your world that even though you seem to have had every advantage imaginable from the outside point of view, that you would still be labeled a failure by your own peers or by your own self? Is there something so wrong with you, or is the negative situation that you're in so overbearing that it is a wonder that you have come even this far? The story of Black Clover depicts the negative, low-rung side of the Clover Kingdom through the eyes of those at the bottom with Zora, Asta, Yuno, Magna, etc. But the truth is, when you're trying to show your audience the rotten side of a hierarchy, even if you do show them the rot, showing them only one side of that rot itself, where those at the bottom keep being discriminated against, is not enough to fully explore it thoroughly. Of course, those who are at the bottom are being oppressed. This is a fact of life that seems to be ever present. This is depicted everywhere by every single form of media. The struggle of the quote-unquote lower class is an extremely important struggle which really does need to be highlighted in order to make sure that the next generation born into that quote-unquote class do not have to continue that struggle. But the truth of the matter is that the concept of struggling isn't exclusive to those who are publicly perceived to be at the bottom rung of the society. Where there are people, there exists nuance. This is especially true when you put forth the concept of expectations. Every single level of this hierarchy has an expectation placed upon them. If you're a peasant, commoner, noble, aristocrat, or a royal, each and every single class has a level of expectation that you either have to live up to or blow past. Black Clover is the perfect show to present to us a multitude of different characters living in the same setting but at a different social level, and use all of them as a vehicle to convey various ideas and themes. While there are so many people who portray the bottom to the top look at society, there is one character who shows us the opposite, who I believe goes toe to toe with the protagonist of the show itself and any other character you could throw at her. She would still manage to come out on top when she goes against these characters, not with regards to power, but with regards to the time, effort, and love and care put into the crafting of her character. She's not only the best written quote-unquote female character in the show, she's one of, if not the best written character in all of Black Clover, and arguably should be in the conversation in the larger context of shonen. With the latest events of the manga adding so much more to who she is as a character, I think it's finally time for me to analyze and talk about Noelle Silva. Let's go. So before trying to break her down, let's actually define Noelle Silva. I believe that Noelle can actually be broken down into two distinctive parts. Number one is unleashed potential, which leads into number two, constant growth. While she has far more dimensions to her than just these two, I believe that when you look at Noelle through these two lenses, her entire being can be encapsulated. She was restrained, and when that restraint was taken away, she started growing and has not stopped. This aspect of her is presented to us from the first chapter she ever appears in. Asta's dialogue to Noelle outright says this. He says, if you train until you can control it being your magic, you will be unstoppable. This one dialogue has carried through the entire story so far for the progression of Noelle. So let's talk about that progression. Character progression reflected in the power residing in characters themselves can be an extremely tricky thing to pull off. If you don't give enough attention to the personality and emotion and those aspects of the character and focus solely on just the power increase, the end product might feel like it's a person who grows in power but not in characterization. Which is why the personality flaws that Noelle is riddled with when the story first starts out is a brilliant starting point. But this alone does not make her character so uniquely good. Too often in shonen manga, you get characters who happen to be extremely weak-seeming with flaws, but ultimately the character arc is not executed so well, and then when they're eventually portrayed to be extremely powerful at a later point in the story, it feels hollow. But recently, though, this trend seems to have changed where the character doesn't start out weak, but they start out strong completely in personality and in power. But unfortunately, as a result of the way that they start, the real progression is not really properly felt in either of those two areas. They seem to feel static, and even though static characters, in my opinion, aren't bad, in these kind of circumstances, it doesn't make for a better trend in comparison to what it was earlier for these characters. In the case of Noelle, however, Tabata has been able to walk this fine line, and he's been able to present to us a character who not only grows in power throughout the story, but actually starts off as a quote-unquote loser who eventually becomes someone capable of leading her own army even. But even this is given further depth, where you can't even call her a quote-unquote loser in the beginning, and you can't call her a perfectly ham-fisted queen in the recent present either. There's a lot of nuance to Noelle, regardless of which part of her arc that you focus on. So let me use the definitions that I've presented in the beginning, and then let me talk about the nuances that are present with Noelle, and let me show you why these two definitions precisely, perfectly encapsulate her. So, how exactly is Noelle presented as a loser in the beginning of the story while also being given enough depth to that loser to ensure that she's not what a loser is exclusively? For this, we need to take a look at Noelle through various point of views. First off, let me quantify what I mean when I call her a quote-unquote loser. When I use this word, it is in reference to how she was portrayed in the beginning versus how she's portrayed now. It is also relegated to her actions that do not have an active impact on the story at hand, as opposed to others whose actions do. In the dungeon arc, for example, she propels Asta at Lotus, but she isn't really the one who came up with the plan or landed the attack. Later, she lends Asta her magic, but she's not the one who actually attacks. In the Royal Capital arc, she has really no idea what to do and is insulted by her siblings and ultimately shuts down. While Asta is getting kidnapped, she tries to save him, but she fails. She tries to plead for a rescue mission for him, but her efforts are in vain because she herself was not able to do anything. The worst that her role ever becomes in the story, though, is during the Eye of the Midnight Sun arc, where all that she has to do in that entire arc, story-wise, is just call upon other strong knights. So, all these moments from the outside looking in amount to substantially seeming irrelevant for her. She feels useless and poorly executed, but with Noelle, even during these moments where she seems like a quote-unquote loser with regards to her involvement in the plot and moments of power, there is a lot of growth taking place and a lot of nuance embedded in there. Like I said earlier, writing a character who goes from a 0 to 100 comes in two parts. It's not exclusively just power that you need to focus on. It involves personal growth as well. During the events that I just listed, Noelle has so many moments, small moments for sure, but so many of them that enrich her character so much more. And she also has arguably one of the most important outside influences that affect the way she goes about the rest of her journey and the progress that she has later and the way she becomes stronger both mentally and physically with her magic during the portion of the story where I called her a quote-unquote loser. This is the Fuego Leon moment that I'm talking about, but I will come back to that because that is such an important moment for her character. So besides that, Noelle also acts as one of the only people who has faith in Asta no matter what during these arcs. Tabata uses a royal girl who has been shown to have incredible latent power and makes her take a small role in the background while she shouts words of encouragement to the poor peasant to defeat the threat that they are facing as a combined unit. Noelle reiterates Asta's capability to Rebecca during the cave arc, and while this might seem unimportant or just very small, these scenes like this, even during the dungeon arc, where she gives words of encouragement to Asta, are far more wide-reaching than you would realize. Noelle being a royal, placing complete faith in Asta is a showcase of subtle change in the society being brought forward. These moments are what help characters like Klaus change his understanding, and one of Noelle's most iconic moments comes from a low energy arc where the focus was once again Asta. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Star Festival mini arc. Noelle finds a little girl who is crying and cares for her, and upon hearing the words of discrimination coming through from the people in the noble realm before even Asta could do anything, Noelle, using her power and position, took control of the situation and ensured that the people there knew that in her midst there was no place for discrimination. Immediately after this, we get a scene of Asta saying that he really likes Noelle. And for her character, this is played off as a gag, and it doesn't really seem that serious when you're reading at a surface level. But this is the first moment where Asta genuinely gains respect for who she is as a person, outside of their roles and relationship as comrades of the same squad. I'm not saying that Asta didn't respect her before this, but there is a huge difference here. Because prior to this incident, Noelle has called Asta and Magna and peasants in general insects and people of lower class and everything, right? So even if Asta sees her fighting and protecting them, it'll always be back in the back of his mind that that's the truth of what she really thinks. But in this moment, Noelle used all her power and all her privilege to actually make a tangible difference with no holds barred, and for no reason other than to preserve the equality, for no reason other than to squash the injustice. All of that put together, all of that in that same moment, makes what she did so much more powerful, makes what she did so much more meaningful than everything that she's done so far in the story. And that is what I mean when Asta gains a level of respect that he probably did not seem to have had before that particular moment. When you reread or rewatch Black Clover, look out for how many times there have been subtle hints at how different Noelle is and how effectively Tabata uses her character to convey things that seem obvious but happen to mean a lot more to the people involved in that situation. So in the previous segment, what I tried to convey to you guys was the nuance involved in Noelle during the arcs where she was a quote-unquote loser, where the nuances of how she affected the world come into place. Now, what about the moments where Noelle herself was affected during those arcs? What exactly happened with Noelle during those arcs that caused her development? Let's talk about one of the most important moments for Noelle from the outside looking in, and let's actually analyze and see if this moment was as big for her as we think it actually was, or if it wasn't, what did it actually represent? Let's talk about the Royal Capital attack arc. When we get that arc, we get some heavy moments of character growth starting for Noelle. During this arc, she was publicly shamed by her brother, but she was protected by Asta. She finally arrived at the battlefield, but again, she was unable to do anything worthwhile because of how much her siblings had just affected her with the scene prior. But finally, someone other than the bulls in Asta, someone held at a standard as high as her own family in the public eye, makes her the focus. Fuego Leon treats her like a person capable and worthy of growth. Fuego Leon's famous dialogue about how being weak is nothing to be ashamed of, but staying weak is easily the catalyst for growth that Noelle experiences throughout the rest of her arc. But when you think about the actual dialogue, is this new? Is this a completely new thing that Noelle is hearing? Is she for the first time considering the possibility that if she stops being weak, then she can stop being ashamed? The answer to that, as surprising as it may seem, is no. To Noelle, this was not a new philosophy, but for her, this dialogue, whatever Fuego Leon said, was a moment of clarity and confirmation. While she was unable to do anything in the moments that followed immediately, her interaction with Fuego Leon unlocked something within her. The thing that's so amazing about Noelle is not the fact that she grows after Fuego Leon tells her to. Noelle could have lived her life where she didn't have to even enter the battlefield. She could have just entered the Black Bulls at her brother's orders and could have just been there without not doing anything and not going through any missions. She could have even left after throwing down her Black Bull's robe like she did in her introductory chapter, but no. Noelle does not give up. Her whole life, she's been facing backlash, and she has never had a good memory her whole life. But guess what? She does not give up. Even with no reinforcement, Noelle has been training. Even before the start of the story, Noelle has been training. Even after being embarrassed in front of peasants, she still trains. She does not give up. Noelle's fight didn't just begin when she joined the Bulls. She's been fighting her entire life. Meeting the Bulls gave her a safe place to keep fighting and to fight along and around those who were trying to do the same thing she was, to succeed. When Fuego Leon tells her that she shouldn't be ashamed of who she is now, but of what she would be if she didn't grow from here, it is not new information to Noelle. It is confirmation of something that she has always known, but coming from someone who is supposed to be on the same level as her own family. For the first time, someone at the upper echelon of society, the same echelon that she belongs to, does not admonish her, but gives her the confirmation that what she has been trying to achieve, what she has been trying to do, and what she has been doing her entire life is what she should have been doing, thus unlocking her potential. Let me give you another example in the story where it is blatantly clear to us that she did not need a starting point for growth because she has been growing from her birth. I mean, obviously, but you know what I mean. So, as I try to break down this moment for you guys, I do want to incorporate a little bit of the understanding that people have with regards to Noelle's views on classism and stuff like that, because in this one moment I personally misunderstood it, and I just want to give a shout out to Viridian where we were talking about this moment and then he made me understand it in a different way. And I think it's really important that we really quite see where Noelle sits with regards to that kind of a theme. I did talk about it a little earlier, but I can only bring it up in this moment. So let's talk about the one time where Noelle didn't just doubt herself, but was actually on the verge of giving up and running away. The time where she almost resorted to clinging on to her position as a royal and abandoning people, which was the first moment where Tabata shows you her emotional strength. This was during the Saucy Village arc. I will 100% highly recommend you guys to go and watch this in the anime rather than in the manga. I know that the beginning of the anime is not something that people like, but in the anime, this entire arc was it was completely Magna's arc. In the anime. In the manga, is very glossed over. Magna does not have a connection as such, but in the anime, it's a very emotional arc for Magna. So I would definitely suggest that you guys go ahead and watch that. So in this one instance where they are fighting Heath Grice, right? In this one instance where the bulls were so overwhelmed, where if only Noelle could do the most basic of things, which was to control her magic, the situation could have been handled much better, but at that point, she couldn't do it. It was way too much for her. To her, at that moment, she was exactly what her family said she was. She was a failure. And a failure couldn't help anyone anyway, so she was resorting to just run away. In this moment, Noelle has a couple of dialogues with regards to her royalty situation, where she says, even though I'm royal, even though I have the highest mana here, I am the most useless person here. I am not contributing to anything. And in a couple of panels after that, Noelle says, I'm royal, I shouldn't even be here, I don't deserve to be here, I want to run away. So what initially I was thinking was, like she's just going back to her, sense of, I'm better than you, I'm superior than you. But the thing is, that has never been her character, even from the beginning. Even from the beginning, she's had her insecurity complex, right? Because of that, every time she says, insect, or I'm royalty, you're just peasant, all that stuff, right? That was coming from a place of insecurity and mimicking what other royals have said already. So those were not Noelle's actual words, and here this entire particular moment actually encapsulates that really well, because she particularly says, I'm royal and I'm the most useless, right? And then immediately once Heath Grice points it out, saying, you can't even control your magic, right? Where she's being faced with that reality, she immediately goes into a shell, and then she goes back to more insecure place, where the same that she was earlier when she was calling Asta and Magna insects or whatever, and she says, I'm a royal, I can't be here. So that was not a moment of classism. That was more of Noelle going back to a regressive state where she's not she's not able to confront her own self, and she just wants to run away into a different understanding of herself to get away. So that's what that particular point was, right? So she felt like she should just abandon everything and run away, right? Because at that point she's just completely overwhelmed. But getting back to telling you guys how this is the first moment where we're being introduced to the concept of Noelle not needing external factors to be motivated, rather just getting a confirmation and stuff like that. We get the moment in this arc where the little girl asks Noelle if she would save her, of her family, and her village. She says, Miss Magic Knight, please save us. Remember that while this is an external factor, like every other factor that we've seen that has been, contributing to Noelle's growth, this is not a motivational factor. This is not someone telling her that she can do it. This is someone asking her if she will help them survive. Later on in this video, I will contrast this moment with a moment that happened in chapter 300 to show you how even though Noelle has changed so much, she's still the same person that she was in the beginning, but what makes her different now is her inner mental strength. When the little girl asks her this, we get a moment where Noelle grows. Here, the growth is so subtle that if you don't understand it, this moment can be passed by like a cheap power-up moment. But based on the context of her character, if you actually analyze what is happening here, Noelle sees herself in that little girl. She sees herself in a situation much worse than what she had been living through herself. Here, we get to the point of the privileged life and the suffering you face in that life versus the suffering faced by people who aren't living that privileged life. Faced with the reality of the world and seeing herself and a child asking for help and unable to give her any is what Noelle went through. She never had a single warm memory, and those around her could not give her any. She wasn't able to give herself any, which is why when it is pointed out to her that she is the only one there who can do something, who can save them, she takes a stance and decides to save herself, stand up for herself, and by proxy stand up for the little girl and all the people there who only she could protect. This entire incident during the Saucy Village brings us closer to understanding that Noelle never had to be inspired to take her first step. All she needed was affirmation that she was sprinting in the right direction. And if you think I'm still reaching with this point, it is literally explicitly pointed out by Mimosa that if Mimosa was her, she would have given up. And it is not for royals to work hard and train, but Noelle still does it. Noelle was a child when she had no support system, when she had no motivation, no single good memory, but she was still persevering. So when Fuego Leon or Yami or Maria Leona or Kahono or Asta or the Bulls or the little girl give her support or ask her something to do from the outside, it is merely making sure to tell her that she is heading in the right direction. Noelle Silva was not made by Asta. She was not made by Fuego Leon or anyone else. She was and always has been the warrior that we know now for as long as she has existed. Throughout the previous sections, we can understand how Tabata still keeps a good pace of progression and character building brewing in the background for Noelle, even when she does not seem plot or power relevant for certain arcs. In Black Clover, there are so many characters that get a big focal point or a sense of short progression that leads up to their big focal point. But outside of these specific moments of import, these characters are not really growing and changing and morphing throughout the story. But with Noelle, there is constant development and growth that happens even when she's relegated to a side character or a tertiary character in a specific arc. So if Tabata can put so much work in her character with a lot of subtlety and by not using her as a main point of an arc, what actually happens when Noelle is the focal point of an arc? Or what happens when she has a moment of action in the arc that impacts the plot? The first time we see a major plot active reliance placed upon Noelle was during the Underwater Sea Temple arc. So far in the story, the only other time where she was depended upon was during the Saucy Village arc that we just spoke about. But this time, it's not a last-minute emotional growth that she needs to go through, but she needs to mature and ensure that she perfects something that was incredibly difficult for her to do at that point in her life. As she has done her entire life, Noelle trains and trains over the course of so many days to no avail, because the way she thought of her training had not changed, even though her confirmation that she was heading in the right direction was gotten. So, while from Fuego's words, she knew that what she was doing was the right thing to do, she still had to learn how to do it properly. In her introductory chapter, Noelle understood that she finally had a place to fit in, but it was during the moments when the entire squad came out to cheer her on where she realizes that she wasn't alone anymore and she was not the only one who had to protect the little girl. She could rely on the rest of her squad and let herself go completely and be sure that even if she failed, it was okay. I was discussing this point again with Veridian, where he was talking about how it didn't feel too earned and it felt like instant gratification, and he would have preferred if she went through a little longer of a process where she interacts with the Black Bulls and comes to understanding herself. But I feel like this particular moment was structured in a very different way for that to even happen, because if that is a way that the understanding took place, it would definitely not be as emotionally satisfying or emotionally as well written. So to break it down, when Noelle is in her Sea Dragon's cradle, where Kahono and Asta are both there trying to tell her, hey, just think of a good memory and let go of this clutch that you've been holding on to, let go of this insecurity that you've been holding on to, so that you can really just like flow out with all your magic. What happens in the cradle is that she is suffocating. She is suffocating at the thought of her life. She's so weighed down by the false understanding that she has, that her entire life has just been horrible, right? Her entire life, every single moment of her life has been horrible, because for a long period of time, that was the truth, right? And not a lot of things had happened up till that point, right? Individually, for it to make a huge impact on her mind to already be pushing those bad memories out, right? But when she opens her eyes and sees that the bulls are there to cheer her on, it's not a moment where, oh, okay, cool, we're just like moving forward with her character. No, that particular moment was a puzzle piece fitting right into its place, where when she sees them, she realizes and is reminded of the fact that, oh wait, my life is not just dedicated to the siblings that I've had. That is a very big part, but that's not the only part of my life. I have been gifted with such friends like the Black Bulls. And in that one moment, she's able to remember every single thing that they've done together with Asta and everybody. And she realizes, wait. This is my life now. I'm finally not in that place anymore. While she does not come away from that insecurity completely, she realizes that while that insecurity is a part of her, it is only that. It is only a part of her. It's not her entire being. So that's exactly how I feel about that. And I think that this particular moment was, done to perfection, where she feels suffocated by the thoughts of her siblings. But then when she sees the Black Bulls, the reminder of, that suffocation is not what your life is, lets her open up and think of the good memories and completely gush out with her feelings and the emotions and completely perfect Sea Dragon's cradle, right? So that was a really, really good moment. And immediately after that, or like when they're going, or like sometime around this time, right, she finally has her own Yami moment. Yami is a great character. I think he's a lot more nuanced than people give him credit for, including myself. But when she has her Yami moment, she's able to understand that Yami's the sort of person who picked her, who let her join the crew, because he had hopes for her, just like he has hopes for every single Black Bull, right? And with her demonstrating to him that she's able to use the cradle, she's able to take them inside, she's proven him wrong, as Yami says in a later chapter, right? She finally realizes that she has his acknowledgement, and she's able to see another figure on the same level as her brother and Fuego Leon has seen that she's capable of something and has placed their faith in her. Again, this is not where she's like, oh, okay, let me go strong. No. This is her realizing that her strength or her progression has been noticed by people and they've placed their faith in her. And I think that's a very, very, very important moment for Noelle overall. So once again, this is another external moment where she's influenced by her people, her friends from the outside, where she's relying on them and is able to create another protective kind of an ability, right? But that's not the only thing that happens in this arc. For her Sea Dragon moment, right, Noelle's complete mindset and way of thinking changes. She realizes that protecting the people precious to her doesn't just stop with defending. It means, like I said when the video first began, she needs to win. She needs to succeed. And for the first time, she isn't just resolved. Noelle actually gets angry. After Kahono gets injured in her throat and she realizes that her friend's dream, just got completely crushed, she realizes that, oh my God, this is not just a place for me to get resolved. Yeah, I'll beat you. No, this is a place where she got angry. And as we know, based on the power and magic system, your personality and mindset will reflect your magic. And for the first time, Noelle is able to use an attack spell with no inhibitions to ensure that justice is brought upon the one who was the cause of the suffering for the people she loved. So again, completely two extremes of her character have been explored just through one arc where she was relegated to more of a power position. So moving on from that, let's talk about the leadership skills that Noelle possesses, right? So recently in the manga, we've had moments where Noelle is extremely confident and she gives orders and she takes the charge and lead, and she's able to give, complete guidance to people and all of that. And she's even able to pacify characters who've been through a lot of emotional stress while she herself is under emotional stress, right? So Noelle's leadership skills have been extremely extensively explored, or at least put to the paper in the recent arcs. But where exactly did this come from? Have we actually seen her be a leader, right? We've seen her moment where she says, Prince or Pauper or whatever, we can all still enjoy, right, during the Star Festival arc. But that isn't necessarily leadership as such when in a battle situation or anything like that, right? So where exactly did this come from? Has Tabata actually foreshadowed it a little bit? And I think that he has, and it's a very cool moment that I think a lot of people skip out on during the Witch Forest arc, when they're all talking to the Witch Queen, and the Witch Queen is she's just not having whatever they're saying, right? Like, I'm the queen, why should I bend to your will, right? And then they're realizing the Diamond Kingdom and the Eye of the Midnight Sun are attacking, and they're just in a tussle talk thinking about what they have to do. And Noelle, she steps up, she says, we're both royalty, so do exactly what you need to do to keep your goddamn country safe. She orders around the Witch Queen, and while later on she still has insecurities with her powers or whatever, this was such a strong moment from her as a character to actually step up and give around orders in a more of a commanding leadership position, right? And I feel like this is seeds that were sown for the payoff that we're getting in the current arc right now. While it was subtle, it's a very direct you can make a very direct correlation between that and this, especially considering the fact that she was Lolo Pechka's a Lolo, who's another royal, and then Vanica again is a royal, and she's fighting against that, right? So she's on an equal scale with all of these people, and she exerts her dominance. That's funny, but she exerts her dominance all over these people in a very strong manner, right? So I think it's a really important point that we need to keep in mind when we're talking about the abilities that she's garnered as a leader, because inherently she's been a leader, and I think that was a beautiful moment of showcase.
Hey everyone, Broodmeister here with a quick editor's note. While I was getting the scans for this portion of the video, I noticed even more parallels between the Witch Queen and Vanica that strengthen Buzzard's argument here. For starters, the Witch Queen and Vanica are the only two characters in the series so far to possess blood magic, but what makes that connection far more compelling is the fact that the Witch Queen's recovery magic has the unique attribute to break curses, while Vanica's secondary attribute just so happens to be curse warding magic. What stood out to me the most, however, is the reoccurring theme of puppetry that both these characters share. The Witch Queen uses her magic to attempt to puppet both Asta and Vanessa, while Vanica puppets the Diamond Generals and Lolopechka, only for herself to then be puppeted by Magicula, along with Lolopechka and the corpses of the Dark Disciples. Tabata very deliberately included these connections between two characters who have yet to so much as acknowledge each other's existence, which makes it pretty clear that the connective tissue here is Noelle, and how she's developed both as a fighter and as a leader since the Witch's Forest arc. Anyway, big thanks to Buzz for letting me sneak this bit in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.
And other than that, in the Witch Forest arc, we do get a moment where Noelle is attacking using the Sea Dragon's Roar once again, right? Like, she's able to attack Fauna and the Salamander using the Sea Dragon's Roar, but as she's trying to do that, she again is sort of inhibited by the memories of her siblings who are weighing her, and these memories that are weighing her down completely, and she's still unsure of herself when the people, and again, she has external influences where she realizes that, oh, okay, no, I need to steal my mind completely, and uses attack magic again intentionally. So far in the story, she's not been able to use the attack magic intentionally, because back during the Seawater Temple arc, the Sea Dragon Roar that she used was more of an emotional moment where she saw Kahono getting hurt, and that power just burst out of her. But at this point, she needs to recreate that power without actually having to be emotional at this point, to be more of a tactical attack, to make sure that the battle progresses in a favorable manner to her side, right? So at this point, once again using external influence, she's able to overcome that. But if you guys think about it, this is the final moment of actual external motivation that I think gives her the confidence to do something, right? And later on, while there are external interactions that help her get through some stuff or like do some stuff, it's never a motivational factor after this. So this was a very important part where she completely steals her mind and uses attack magic again. And once she's able to do this, she gets a resolve that was going to come in handy during the Royal Knights exam, where she takes a big leap as a person. So one of the other times where Noelle has been again influenced by external factors was during the hot springs, where she has to get up the mountain using her mana skin. Of course, she's struggling. She thinks that, so far in the story, the one thing that she's suffered with regards to power, with the control of her ability, she's unable to do it. But with Meriliono's words, where she reminds Noelle that, wait, you're from a big, really strong line. And, again, this is not to do with your insecurity, but there is a bar that a Silva has to reach, especially considering the fact that a seer or your mother would have been able to do this no problem. Further, in this moment with Merilliona, we get a more direct understanding of the points that I've made with regards to how this is not motivating her to start from page 1. It is a confirmation that she's done the right thing, right? Here, Merilliona says that even though she has very real and physical and magical limitations at this moment, she tells her that Noelle has changed. The general vibe of Noelle has completely changed. And most importantly, I would add that if she has resolved to get to the top, then she definitely should do it. And Noelle finally solidifies her inner self, and from this moment on, you actually never see her falter internally due to her insecurities of not being worthy or standing on the same level of her siblings. That never ever happens. And of course, she goes to the top and she succeeds. That's a very beautiful metaphor that Tabata used to reinforce the themes that he's been using so far, where she gets to the top of the mountain, because at that point Merilliona acknowledges her, which comes into play for the next arc. This resolve that I just spoke about, which she got, is immediately tested and proved in the next arc, the Royal Knights exam arc, where Noelle finally goes up against Solid, the one who caused her the most grief. She has to straight up face the personification of her trauma, and she does, with no holds barred. Noelle outright states the validation that she craved for her entire life means nothing at this point, because people she now holds at an esteem higher than her siblings that she's ever had her siblings at have seen what she was capable of doing and have unleashed her potential, and because of that, she has grown continuously, and she has finally overcome the struggle that she has been facing so far, and for the first time, in the realest sense of the word, she succeeds. The warrior finally gets into battle, and she succeeds and she wins. Again, symbolically represented when she was able to go up top the mountain. So, by the time we get to the Elf arc, where an entire saga and multiple arcs have gone by, we finally get to see Noelle in a level of power where she's finally perceived the way that characters who are presented as powerful in the beginning of their stories are. With this, Noelle was given ample and enough time to connect with the readers, grow alongside the readers, and make this perception that is finally granted to her feel absolutely earned and completely validates her arc as a whole. Normally, this is where the character arc of a person would end, and we'd finally have someone coming to a close with their role in the story, but contrary to the popular opinion and understanding, the moment where Noelle gains her Valkyrie armor is not the end or closure to her character arc. It is arguably the beginning of the next phase of it. It is wrongly perceived that Noelle's character arc ends when she finally gets the validation that she has been denied her entire life. Noelle does not suddenly gain a power-up because she was validated and acknowledged by Noelle. No, his acknowledgement finally lets her put down the weight that she's been carrying as a 15-year-old girl. When she uses the Valkyrie dress and moves around, she says it's as if I've been released from a cage. Even if acknowledgement was not required, the fact that she got it was a huge emotional moment for her. And what happens here is that Noelle, once again, unsurprisingly, grows. She grows emotionally and becomes even more mature, and by understanding what Noelle had done for her, she comes to the conclusion that even though the way he went about protecting her was absolutely the worst way he could have done it, she still realizes that at the end of the day, he did it because it is the duty of family to protect family. At this point, forgiveness might not be a reality that she can achieve, but acceptance of her family for who they are is a level that Noelle is able to come to. When that acceptance happens, Noelle flies. This warrior dances on the battlefield like her mother before her and protects her family. Noelle's character arc ended in the previous arc where she fought solid, but when the cage is lifted, even though that has come to an effective and solid close in the previous arc, the remnants of her insecurities and her feelings towards her siblings finally come undone, and she can finally start her actual growth instead of just trying to break out of her trauma as she's been doing her entire life. And finally, this is where Noelle Silva is really born. This is where the warrior is born. After this arc, we see the seeds that Tabata planted in the Witch Forest arc's beginning finally bloom. Tabata enforces her confidence and her sense of leadership multiple times over after she finally achieves the Valkyrie dress. She battles Fauna by herself and arguably wins if not for the hack's healing that Fauna had, and finally she's able to try and look outward and go beyond accepting her family and tries to understand her family. She goes to Dorothy to understand where Noelle and his toxicity and negativity was ever born. What happened to them? What happened to their mother? Throughout the Heart Kingdom, Noelle has been an absolute powerhouse in both personality and raw strength. Her sheer skill against Gaja when they first meet impresses the man who tussled with the actual Wizard King. This was the moment when we should have realized that Noelle was going to be her own protagonist away from Asta for the next arc. After he is separated from Noelle, she completely takes charge and goes into action and completely starts fighting Gaja and protects her friends. She proudly announces her title as a royal and a knight of the Clover Kingdom and of the Black Bulls, and is automatically the focal point of the situation. The growth that we've seen Noelle undergo from the beginning buys something from the audience. It buys patience, understanding, and acceptance for the person that Noelle herself has become after the Elf arc. During the Heart Kingdom arc, she is the one who empowers Lolo, and she is the one who is the main point of action. The one who has a personal and visceral connection to the main antagonist at that point was Noelle. Not any other Black Bull and not the Queen of the Heart Kingdom, who stands by as a support character. If Noelle's character had begun at the place where we saw her during the Elf arc when the story first began, this would appear completely overbearing and more like a forced insert of her personality to remain strong in lieu of Lolo. But since we saw as an audience, and since we as an audience have understood and witnessed every single thing that she had to overcome and go through to even become the person that she is, it is so satisfying for her to help someone like Lolo, who is in an emotional state that appears to be similar to the one that Noelle was in when the series first began. But again, when we see Noelle get defeated at the hands of Vonica, I expected her to completely be broken up about it. I felt like it was too forced and one-note feeling when Noelle immediately got up to go get stronger without ruminating in her defeat. Not only that, Tabata showed us a different character brooding in Undine, and Noelle of course uses her strong resolve to blow past even that. It was, of course, the obvious thing to do, to get stronger and strengthen others, but it felt like the defeat didn't really strike Noelle, and I was ultimately disappointed by the lack of even emotional consequences to something that appeared to be the biggest defeat that she has ever faced. But the thing, though, that is tremendous about Black Clover is that it is not meant to be consumed in individual chunks. When you do not remember the nuances of each connective narrative thread, it does not make sense for you to go, oh, that's not within character. Because if Noelle's character began where she was with the Valkyrie dress, then what I said would be valid. But the thing is, her starting line was as a failure. She was living in and with failure and as a failure for the majority of her life. To her, a loss is not new. It's not unexpected. It's welcomed. And she didn't have a lifetime of winning to be so emotional after a single loss. Yes, it is a loss, but at the end of the day, for her, it's something that she's faced with her entire life. So this comes as a small stepping stone for her, where she's like, okay, I've lost, but now I gotta go and win. I gotta get stronger and win. That's the focal point that we need to look at here. And not only this, but Tabata takes the opportunity here to make sure that he conveys to us that Noelle has grown, but ultimately, like we've always known, she is a warrior. While she was not physically or mentally able to prove to herself that she was one, her time during the Elf Saga was dedicated to ensuring that she was building up a solid foundation for herself as a warrior. And at this point, she has now proven to herself that she is a warrior. She was a survivor and finally became a winner. She was someone who had to act, and finally, when she was facing Magicula after overcoming the hurdle of Vonica in chapter 300, she once again faces the truth of the world, and Tabata lets us speak into her mind and see what it is that she's going through. She's devastated and crying and weak. The truth that she faced was that the world is one that is rooted in inequality, injustice, and tragedy. And what she still firmly believes, even when faced with that undeniable truth, is that humanity is strong. Humanity is the embodiment of survival, and what she needs to do right now is succeed. Because Noelle Silva is the warrior. So if you guys couldn't tell, the script so far was written before chapter 301 dropped, where Noelle finally acknowledges her feelings for Asta and finally, comes out of that shell she's in. And, I just want to point out that even though all of that was happening, where she acknowledges where she gets her raw strength, emotional, strength from, because he has been her cornerstone all this time, I would like to point out that towards the end of the chapter, where she says that this is still a battlefield and she gets powered up and ready to fight, that is where you'd see the change in who she is. Because early on, she would have been hung up about that. She would not have accepted that, and she would have been too in her own mind about the fact that, oh my god, I actually like Asta, and all that stuff. But at this point, with how she's matured as a woman and as a warrior, as you guys have probably heard so far, she finally gets a grip on the situation that she's in, and she does not lose sight of the main focus, which is to defeat the threat that's looming in front of them. And I love the fact that Tabata really benched Asta in this chapter, because we really needed to see Noelle be the one who's taking charge and still attack. Because while it is really important and very, very fitting that Asta is her emotional cornerstone, it would not make sense for him to be the one to defeat Magicula as well in her place, right? So I really love the fact that Tabata stuck with his guns, and from an emotional and narratively, from an emotional standpoint, it's a very well done moment. So I'm really glad that he went that way. But man, this has been a big video in the making, and I know you guys might be used to longer videos from me, but this is a different type of longer video, because I've never really done a scripted video that's been this long. So I really appreciate all of you for sticking so far into the video. And if I really hope that you can drop a like, and if you're new here, subscribe, because a lot of effort. So I would really like for it to get a lot of people involved and really see how amazing Noelle is, not just for her from a strength perspective. I've seen a lot of people throw it on, people think that getting stronger is good character writing. Like, no, that's not what we think, even though that is a point of Noelle. That's like only half of her, because she's amazing in every other way as well, so I just wanted to point that out. And I don't think she's a perfect character, but I do think that she's a fantastic character, arguably one of the best in all of Black Clover. So yeah, with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for the support. A lot of videos have been doing really good lately, and I'm really happy with that. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.